Hey, David Brewster here, new episode of Scales and Tales, and this is the Little Dreamer Pentatonic Workout. And this lesson is going to revolve around the classic song Little Dreamer by Van Halen, which is found on their debut album from 1978. And let's be honest here, in 1978, Edward Van Halen was on fire. I mean, the debut album came out, I think the entire world stopped and noticed what Eddie was doing with the guitar. It changed the game. You know, guitar heroes like Peter Frampton and Ted Nugent didn't have a chance. Eddie just came out of the gate screaming. He was totally on fire. So this lesson's going to basically mimic something that I discovered when I was a teenager, and I was actually learning Little Dreamer. And I stumbled on this and started playing with it, and then over the years I continued to kind of play with it, and eventually I turned it into a lesson and started sharing it with my students, and then the next thing I knew, I had the Little Dreamer Pentatonic Workout. Okay, to get started here, all we're going to do is just outline the progression, that opening riff from Little Dreamer. It starts with an implied C minor 7, right? So just think of C minor pentatonic right there. And then it moves to G minor 7 implied, right? And just think of G minor pentatonic down there. So to get started here, all we're going to do is just literally shift from C minor to G minor pentatonic, and there's a big position shift right there. And just kind of think of the tempo from Little Dreamer and just play, you know, the pentatonic scales in that tempo. You know, really simple stuff, right? There's ascending. And then play a descending too. Okay, let's start sequencing those scales. So now let's just take, you know, a kind of a basic sequence here. Let's go up 6 notes, go back 2, and then go all the way up the rest of the scale like this. One more time. So there's C minor, right? Now move to G minor and do the same thing. This is a great exercise because not obviously you're working on the position shift, but you're also thinking about multiple scales. You're playing C minor pentatonic, and then you're also thinking of G minor pentatonic. So this exercise forces you to think. Sorry if you don't like thinking when you're playing guitar, but this exercise definitely makes you think. So that's ascending. Let's go ahead and flip it and do descending. Start on the top. And just start in C minor pentatonic and do pull-offs now. Like that. And we're really just exhausting, you know, different ways of kind of, you know, tackling those scales on the fretboard. And pretty soon we're not going to do the position shift. That's just in the beginning right there. So buckle up. Okay, let's sequence these scales again, but now we're going to string skip. We're literally going to leapfrog our way through C minor and G minor pentatonic, and I want you to ascend in C and then descend in G, like this. You know, something like that. So C minor pentatonic ascending, and we're literally just leapfrogging our way through the scale. Just skip every other string. I'm using Hammer-Ons there, of course. Take that, reposition back to G minor, and then descend using pull-offs. And you just kind of create this weaving, like string-skipped pentatonic, you know, playground, really, right there. Now things are going to become more difficult. So instead of just moving the same pentatonic position, the box, right? Instead of just moving from C minor to G minor and having that big position shift, let's start including some different pentatonic positions and see what happens. So let's ascend C minor right here. Then we're going to basically position shift right here a whole step higher, and we're going to descend G minor pentatonic, but it's right there. Right? So think of G minor pentatonic, but it's that position. Right? But we're doing C minor on the way up, and then G minor on the way down. Right? That definitely kind of makes you think a little bit more. Instead of just moving the box back and forth, now we're incorporating, that other position of G minor pentatonic right there. Now let's do this again. Let's investigate like this lower position here. We had G minor pentatonic right there, right? And there's a C minor pentatonic that lives right there. It's actually the same one that we just had in G, way up here, but then positioned, there it is in the key of C. So now we can do this. Here's C minor pentatonic, and then descend G minor pentatonic right there. Let's do that again. Let's do it right here. Here's the C minor pentatonic box, right? Now think of G minor pentatonic, but in that position, and you can find it right here. Right? That's G minor pentatonic, but starting right there. So then combine those two. Here's C minor, and then come down G minor right there. Alright, the last variation I'm going to share here definitely kicks things up a notch as far as the difficulty, because now instead of weaving between two pentatonic positions, one in C and one in G minor, now we're going to weave between multiple positions of C minor and also multiple positions of G minor too. Something like this. So right there, there's C minor, right? I'm going to break this kind of in half. There's C minor. And you can see we're doing this kind of index finger shift between F and G all the way up. So right here, there's your F and G again, so slide. And then F and G again, like that. And then we're going to do the exact same thing in G down here. But right there, instead of doing this, we're totally doing this. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Scales and Tales with this look at the Little Dreamer Pentatonic Workout. And really what I'm sharing here is just an idea or a concept, using Little Dreamer kind of as a vehicle. This is something that I tapped into back when I was a teenager. I was like 13, and I could barely play any Van Halen, but I could play the Little Dreamer riff, and that's kind of where this idea started. And I remember sitting in my room kind of playing with that riff, and then I started playing with the scale, and the next thing I knew I was kind of weaving back and forth, and I had no idea what I was doing back then. Now at least I have some idea of what I'm doing, but there's tons of variations you can make. There's hundreds and hundreds of different ways you can kind of weave and mix, between those two chords. And this is just one example, one little fragment of the chord progression. You could apply this to a different song, different chord progression, different key, different tonality. You could move into major, tonalities or something, or modal tonalities or whatever. So it's really just an idea. You're focusing on one song or one riff or one, example. You're pulling, some information from that, kind of stirring it up and changing it around and adding some of your own ideas to it. And then next thing you know, you have something new or original that you've created, which in this example is the Little Dreamer Pentatonic Workout. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.